Hello everyone and welcome to Cinderful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the Grey. Today's video, we're going to check out all of the brand new realm rules for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. We're going to look through the battle plans and indeed the updates to the endless spells as well for the next season of the General's Handbook, GHB. Now, this one is called Region of War and or the Bitter Lands. And this focuses on wizards. We knew that coming in. That was sort of the little hint a bit we got about it. So let's have a look at sort of what this is. So our realm rule is wizard heroes with a wounds characteristic of 9 or less that are not unique will gain the Antorian Locus keyword. At the start of the battle round, after priority is determined, a player taking the second turn can pick one friendly hero on the battlefield. If that hero is an Antorian Locus, they can attempt to cast one extra spell and attempt to unbind one extra spell in that battle round. If they're not, though, you receive one command point that can only be spent to allow that hero to issue a command. So an extra command point if it's not a wizard, or you get an extra spell. Pretty cool. Now, this does mean as well, if you are an army that has access to both, you totally can not pick a wizard and get the command point if that's what you want. Now, primal magic. This is the big thing. And I will say right from the get-go, not a fan of any realm rule that takes 4 paragraphs to explain. I like the idea of what this is, having read through it. It's not the worst realm rule we've had. However, this is just ridiculous that it is this much wording for, a realm rule. This is not going to be friendly to any new player trying to understand this. But let's go through it. So, at the start of the hero phase, both players roll a dice. For each 4+, each player receives 1 primal magic dice. After a player attempts to cast or unbind a spell, or after a player attempts to dispel an endless spell, they can roll 1 of their primal magic dice. If they do so, they add the result to the casting, unbinding, or dispelling roll. That player can continue to roll additional primal magic dice until the caster suffers a primal miscast, or there is a primal magic dice, or there isn't a primal magic dice to be rolled. Now, abilities that allow you to reroll casting, unbinding, or dispelling rolls must be used before primal magic dice are rolled. If you choose to use an ability to reroll casting, unbinding, or dispelling roll, you cannot use primal magic dice to supplement that roll. At the end of each battle round, any primal magic dice that have not been used are lost. So, when a primal magic dice is rolled as part of a casting roll, on the unmodified casting roll that includes any double ones, the caster will suffer a primal miscast. Instead of a miscast, their spell roll is not successfully cast, and the caster will suffer D3 plus 3 mortal wounds. And each other unit within 3 inches of the caster suffers D3 mortal wounds. In addition, the caster cannot attempt to cast any more spells in that phase. So it's a super miscast if you manage to do it, and it's if you get double ones in any form. So not just rolling a double one, it is, if there's a double 1 and a 3 or something like that as well. Now, when a primal magic dice is rolled as part of a casting roll, and on an unmodified casting roll that includes a double 6, that spell is successfully cast and cannot be unbound. In addition, the caster cannot attempt to cast any more spells in the same phase, and both players would receive a primal magic dice. So this is about super casting. Effectively, it's either going to boost your magic up to the wazoo, or we are going to suffer these major miscasts. So it is an interesting one. So if you roll a 1 or a 6 in your thing, you got to be careful on what you want to do, but effectively it's just going to boost up your magic dice. And if you manage to get the 6s in there in your casting rolls, you can sort of try and get the other 6s and boost up and get more primal magic dice in there. So it's interesting on how it works. We then have unique enhancements, and these are called Nullstone Adornments. They're a unique enhancement that can only be taken by an army that does not include any wizards or any units with the abilities that would allow them to cast spells in the same manner as a wizard. So this would mean, if you've got one of these items like the Arcane, it's the Arcane Tome and all those sort of things that give you the extra wizarding ability. So these are pretty cool. To help out some other armies, you've got hand-carved Nullstone Icon. If the bearer can attempt to unbind one spell or attempt to dispel one endless spell in the enemy hero phase in the same manner as a wizard. Each time the bearer successfully unbinds or dispels an endless spell using this ability, the bearer can attempt to unbind one additional spell in that phase. So you've got like a little cool thing that allows you to chain out your unbind. That's actually pretty cool. Pouch of Null Dust. Once per battle at the start of the hero phase, you can say that the bearer will use their Pouch of Null Dust. If you do so until the end of that phase, unmodified casting rolls that include a double 1, double 2, or double 3 are traded as miscast, or if a primal dice was rolled, a primal miscast. In addition, roll a dice each endless spell on the battlefield. On a 5+, it's dispelled. Yeah, it's okay. I think that's probably better than the first one, because the first one you don't get any bonuses. Which would mean, against some of the super magic armies, that first one is just useless. It doesn't matter. You're never going to get the second chance because it would just stop you. Against things like Techless or powerful wizards in the game that are getting all those big bonuses, that first one's really not going to be that helpful. The second one could be quite interesting because it does really up the danger. And then you've got Polished Nullstone Pebble, where when this unit is picked as the target of a spell or abilities of the endless spell on a 4+, the caster must pick another unit within 3 inches of this unit and within range to target the spell. If when picking another unit, there's no other units within 3 inches within range, you just simply ignore and the effects of the endless spell abilities on this unit instead. So this could be pretty cool if your wizard's not near anything. You can just ignore. I think out of all of these, I think Pouch of Null Dust for the once per battle, this could really help you get out of step with, say, a alpha striking wizard army that could be a potential thing within this little campaign, or this GHB pack. I think would probably be the one I would go, but is an Nullstone enhancement. So we'll see. I think the Pouch of Null Dust is probably my favorite. We then have a Realm Sphere magic, so you can pick one spell from the Law of Primal Frost for each Antorian locus in your army instead of picking one spell from another spell they know. So you would get these instead of your regular spell laws you have access to. First of all, we have Hoarfrost, casting value of 8 and a range of 12, so really high casting and a really short range. If you successfully cast, you pick a friendly unit, hold within range, and visible to the caster, so hold within 12 for a wizard, pretty short. You pick one melee weapon profile on that unit's war scroll, roll a d3, change the to hit, to wound, and range characteristic of those melee weapons to match the result till the start of your next hero phase. If the result of a 2, you could either change the hit 2+, change the wound to 2+, or the rend to 2+. So yeah, this is interesting. Yeah, so you get to pick one. You don't get all 3, you get to pick one. I don't mind this. This is interesting. You do have to pick before you roll though, so rend is always a dangerous one if you've got higher than rend 1. The hit and wound roll is generally going to be an easier way to go, and I think the wound roll is generally going to be the one because it's much harder to get wound rolls on a low number, or it's much harder to get bonuses to your wound rolls. So if you're on a 3 or 4+ to wound, it almost always is going to be a nice one to take. We then have Rupture, casting a value of 10 and a range of 18, successfully cast. Pick one predatory, endless spell, or incarnate within range, invisible. That target immediately becomes wild and cannot be picked to be controlled or bonded for the rest of the battle. Yeah, that's insane. Yes, that's a ridiculously high casting value, but just having that sitting in your pocket, if your opponent ever chooses to play endless spells or an incarnate, could be quite a big sort of thing. And then you've got Merciless Blizzard, is this spell that has a casting value of 12 and a range of 12. Casting value of 12, wow. Successfully cast, pick an enemy unit within range and pick visible to the caster. Unit suffers 46 mortal wounds, but for each roll of a 1, the caster also suffers d3 mortal wounds that cannot be negated. The range spell cannot be modified and must be measured from the caster, even if the ability would allow you to measure it from elsewhere. This is interesting because this is obviously trying to get you to use primal magic. And obviously, I think, most people, your first thought, you go, oh, Techless would be good, but he's not an Antorian Locus. So this definitely does stop Techless being able to do it. So trying to find a foot hero with a nice big casting value is going to be interesting. I wonder what potentially could get the casting value to really help get this through. Be an interesting sort of spell. I think all of these are nice. They definitely got their thing. But because you're going to be including extra wizards, right? Would you be including extra wizards to tank these. Would these be extra spells if you're spell lore? I could see some armies with spell lores that aren't particularly good using these, so something like Stormcast, where a lot of them are just damage dealing and not particularly great. This could be really useful in a Stormcast force, but then you're not an army that gets an awful lot of casting bonuses, so is that any good? Well, you know, someone who has like a really good spell lore, like say Beasts of Chaos or Slaves to Darkness, that have those good spell lores, would you be taking these over your lore? I'm not too sure. We then have our different command traits, so these can be taken for your Antorian Locust. So obviously if you've got a leader, so this is pretty interesting. So there are some cool ones in here. First of all, you know all the spells from the Lore of Primal Frost, which is nice. And then at the start of your hero phase, if the general is on the battlefield, on 5+, you gain a Primal Magic Dice. Yeah, I mean, it's not as good as the command point one, because the Primal Magic Dice aren't, you know, net positive. They do have negatives, 2 of them. Chilled to the Bone, once per battle, if the general suffers a miscast or primal miscast, you can roll a dice on a 3+, you can ignore. Yeah, not a fan of that, because it's once per battle and then roll a dice for a chance. I know it potentially can ignore a primal miscast, but yeah, it's not the greatest. Eater of Magic, each time you successfully unbind a spell on a 5+, the caster no longer knows the spell, and you may not cast it again for the rest of the battle. That's interesting, because obviously if you can get this on a wizard that's got good dispelling potential, that I don't mind. Yes, it is a roll-off to use your thing, but that's a really good effect for it. Now moving on, we have the core battalions. We've got 2 of them, as always, the Antorian Acolytes and the Wizard Finders of Antor. So the first one is just 3 of your champions, characters with 10 wounds or less. So at the start of the hero phase, of 2 or more friendly Antorian Locust units on the battlefield, roll a dice on a 3+, you gain a Primal Magic Dice. Cool, like being able to, if you've really invested in those wizard heroes, why would you not go do this? Wizard Finders and what's cool is if you've only got like 2 Antorian Locusts, this still allows you to put a 3rd-foot hero in there and still get the benefits. But then we have the Wizard Finders, which include 1 champion, 2 infantry, and a monster. Wizards can't be included in part of this battalion in any way, but you do, each time a unit in this battalion is picked to fight, you can say that it will go on a wizard hunt. If you do so, pick 1 melee weapon profile on that unit's war scroll. Till the end of the phase, you get +1 attack on that particular melee weapon profile. So, a way to go hunting wizards. Potentially, if you got, you know, something with a nice range of 3 on the monster, could be really interesting to get that extra attack through, or even, you know, a 2-inch reach unit with spears and stuff that can reach over and go stab. It's a nice one to take. I do like these 2 battalions. I think they're not quite as countering as previous ones we've had, so it's definitely not the worst couple of battalions we've had in an edition change, or sorry, not an edition change, a GHB change. Moving on to grand strategies. Now, I don't want these to be easy to complete. I don't want battle tactics to be easy to complete. I don't like it when the things are, but I want them to be simple, so I'm not seeing any massive paragraphs in any of these, so we'll see. They definitely don't look like last season's where they were really long and really wordy, and weren't that much harder to complete. They were just really wordy and more confusing. So when the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy of 2 or more friendly wizard units from your army within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield. This is cool because it doesn't need to be just Antorian Locusts, it is just wizards, which is cool. Spellcasting Savant. When the battle ends, you complete this if the model you pick to be your general is an Antorian Locust and has not been slain. Slaughter of Sorcery. This battle ends when you complete this grand strategy if there are no wizard units on the battlefield. That just says wizards in its entirety, so you can't pick this if you have wizards. Barren Icescape. When the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if all enemy units that have artifacts of power are destroyed and there are no enemy units within 6 inches of the battlefield center. That's a little bit hard. It's a double part one. Always, you know, a little bit harder to complete than the others, but I'm not disliking any of these because the Antorian Locusts are just generally going to be quite easy to pick off. Overshadow. When the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if all enemy battle line units from your opponent's starting army are destroyed and there is at least 1 friendly battle line unit from your starting army on the battlefield. That's cool. And Magic Made Manifest. When the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if there are 2 or more endless spells or incarnates on the battlefield that are controlled by or bonded to friendly units. Some of them are a little bit easier than others, but none of them are sort of auto, because Antorian Locusts don't have the protections that, say, the Galatian champions have had. So not disliking the grand strategy. I think these are definitely a better pair of grand strategies, making this GHB look much more fun, interesting, exciting than the previous one. And so then we have the battle tactics. So we've got a bunch of them. We've got 8 different battle tactics. Cool, a nice amount. 3 extra to complete on top of the general. Hopefully these are more generic, because this means, hopefully armies can sort of use these without needing to dip into their own. If people are worried about, book battle tactics that are very hit and miss, some armies are really good, some armies are really bad, etc. So we've got Intimidate the Invaders. You complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn. There are more friendly units wholly outside your territory than there are friendly units within. It's an interesting battle tactic. Reprisal. You complete this battle tactic if an enemy unit that destroyed a friendly general early in the battle is destroyed this turn. So sort of like eye for an eye, but a little bit more specific. Endless Expropriation. Pick an enemy unit that is controlling or bonded to another spell or incarnate. You complete this battle tactic if any of the following are true. Wild, endless spell controlled or bound is bonded to a friendly unit, or that incarnate is wild. Cool. Magical Dominance. You complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if a friendly wizard unit successfully casts one or more spells, and none of the spells cast by units in your army were unbound. That can be risky. But you could always... There's certainly a way to play around that. I would, you've got this, and you're sort of in a position of power to not need your magic as much one turn. I'd just be like, Techless, cast one spell on on auto, and just use it. Or is it the Night Haunt that allow you to cast one spell, or the Bone Reapers? I think it's the Bone Reapers have that. Do they have that anymore? I can't remember. Bait and Trap. You complete this battle tactic if 2 or more friendly units retreated this turn and 2 or more different friendly units made a charge. That's really cool. Sort of switching up your combats. Led into the Maelstrom. You complete the battle tactic if 1 or more friendly heroes and 1 or more friendly battle line unit made a charge move on at least one of those units within 3 inches of an enemy unit at the turn. That can always be bad. You've got to make sure you don't kill an enemy, or double charge in the case. And Surround and Destroy. Pick 3 different units on the battlefield. You complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn. If those units are wholly within 6 inches of different battlefield edges and 2 or more of those units are wholly outside your territory. I don't mind these battle tactics. I think they're definitely hard to complete. I think lots of them are available to the game. What I like about this as well with these battle tactics is this here. So I haven't read the battle plans yet. We'll go into that next. But this here just straight away means I could play this set of battle tactics and ignore the realm rules if I'm wanting to play a basic set of games. Nothing here requires me to have Antorian Locusts. This makes this battle pack, or at least the battle tactics here, available outside this battle pack, which is cool. This gives longevity to this to be able to be used as another thing, not having to play all the realm rules, being able to play more simplified games of this battle pack. I really like this. I think this is a very good set of battle tactics, and I know, obviously these are meant for competitive play, and these are meant for the competitive season, but being able to just go, cool, these battle tactics, and hopefully we'll have a look at the battle plans, we'll see what we can get, as long as there's, and not all the battle plans need to be this, but if this allows me to get extra sort of play out of this General's Handbook and a more simplified version of play out of it, I will be a big fan. Today's video is brought to you by Gap Games, a fantastic retailer in Australia for a variety of different miniature war games. If you'd like to help support the channel, we have an affiliate link where by clicking on and purchasing, you'll help support the channel, but you'll also help support Gap Games, which is a fantastic servant to the community. Alrighty, so let's have a look at the different battle plans. So, this is the first one we've got here, Towers in the Tundra. These aren't in order, apologies. So, we've got the deployment map here, just straight up, 2 objectives in the center of the table, and victory conditions for this. Score 1 victory point, control at least 1 objective, score 2, and score 1 point if you score both. Score 2 victory points if you complete your battle tactic. We also score points at the end of the battle as follows. Score 2 victory points if there are no units garrisoning the Wizard's Tower in enemy territory. Score 2 victory points if units are garrisoning the Wizard's Tower in your territory. If any starting army did not include any units that could garrison a terrain feature, score 2 victory points if you control the Wizard's Tower in your territory instead. So a big thing here, you need to put 2 defensible terrain features on the table here is really important, which is the Wizard's Tower. These will have the Arcane Scenery rule. The attacker will pick which territory. Each player chooses 1 defensible terrain feature or faction terrain feature wholly within their territory to represent the Wizard's Tower. Which is pretty cool. Wizard's Tower have the Arcane Scenery rule, in addition to any other scenery rules they have. The player then uses alternating deployment, starting with. So this is pretty cool. 2 towers in the tundra. This is, requiring you to effectively capture the flag is pretty cool. I could see this going in some battle packs and really having some cool conversions on the table. I don't dislike this. Like, this is, a general battle plan. Score 1, score 2, but then there's these 2 sort of end of game objectives to get some extra points. I don't mind this battle tactic, one of the battle plans at all. I think it's a nice one. We then have Power Flux. So there are 4 objectives, and you can see they're marked here with A, B, B. Aether Surges, if in this battle, players can only score victory points for objectives that have been activated at the start of each battle round. After determining which player who takes the first turn, the player taking the second turn decides which pair of objectives are activated. Each player scores victory points for score 1 if you control 1, score 1 if you control both, score 1 victory point for each activated objective you control that is contested by a friendly Antorian locus, and that has no enemy ones near it. Score 1 victory point if any enemy wizard units were destroyed in that battle round. So this is very much a battle plan focusing on this season. Still, I don't mind this. I think this is cool. 2 objectives, though, in a battle plan is less interesting in this one, I think, than the previous one. Because the last one, yes, it had 2 objectives, but you also had the Wizard Towers in play. This could be really interesting. I don't mind this one, but I can see this being a bit of a scrum. I think almost always, there's going to be a certain way it's going to be played. Early in the game, it's going to be A and A. Yeah, it's interesting to sort of see, there'll be certain ways you play this game on what you're doing. You can line up for alpha strikes and you'll go A to pretty much just pin your opponent in. If your opponent is playing too defensive against your alpha strike, you just go B. Yeah, it can be really sort of gamed quite easily. This probably isn't my favorite battle plan, I'd say. So we'll go 1 good, but 1 good for a more fun reason, I think, is the other one. Reminds me of the old Watchtower scenario. So 1 good just because I like it and I've maybe got good memories, but this one's probably not a good one. We then have Geometric Pulse. So the attacker picks the territory, and starting with the attacker, each player must set up their units wholly in their territory. The pulse is the big rule here. At the start of the second battle round, after determining which player will take the first turn, the player taking the second turn picks either objective A or objective B to be the pulse for that battle round. So you can see the 2 sides of the table there. At the start of each subsequent battle round, the objective adjacent to the pulse that has not yet been the pulse becomes the pulse. Only 1 objective can be the pulse per battle round. Objectives cannot be moved in this battle. So each player scores victory points as follows: 1 victory point if you control at least 1, 2 victory points if you control the pulse, 1 victory point for each objective adjacent to the pulse, and score 2 if you completed your battle tactic. I actually don't mind this scenario. I think this is pretty cool. Moving the objectives across the battlefield is going to be a really fun sort of thing. This is going to keep the game moving. What could be interesting with a pulse is if these were a bit more staggered across the table, if it was zigzagging, if it was 1 here, so 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here. So these 2 in the center here were sort of up and down. Could be really interesting for the movement of the battle, but I don't mind this. I definitely would put this in my better pile, so probably 2 and 1 at the moment. We then have Nexus Collapse, and look, the objectives are in a more difficult to deploy zone, but I don't think anything's really an issue with objectives anymore. When you got this grid and you put on the grid in this way, this is fine. But we do have the instability rule. At the start of each battle round, after the first turn, after determining which player will take the first turn, the player with the fewest victory points can choose to collapse up to 2 objectives. If both players are tied, the players roll off, and the winner can choose to collapse 1 objective instead. So roll a dice for each unit within 6 inches of a collapsed objective. On a 4+, the unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Once rolls have been made for those units, remove all collapsed objectives from the battlefield. This is cool. There are definitely going to be... so you wouldn't have any removed, but you could end up with a game where there's no objectives on the table. That's definitely a thing. So score 1 victory point if you control at least 1. Score 1 if you control 2 or more. 1 if you control more than your opponent. So 1, 2, 3, generic sort of scoring finally in one of these. I don't mind this. I like this sort of deployment. I like the corner-to-corner deployment. I think this is a fun deployment map. I don't mind the objectives in this. I think, and I like that if you're tied, it will just be 1 on the return. I like that it does lessen in this. I'm honestly a fan of this one. I think this is one of the better battle plans we've had. So definitely looking up. So what is that? That's 3, 2, 1 battle plan wise. And this is a cool one because this, once again, has nothing to do with Antorian Locusts. This will have a place outside of this battle pack. We then have lines of communication. 3 objectives in the center. This is going to be a really big scrum in the center. Disruption, though, at the start of each battle round, after determining which player will take the first turn. Player taking the second turn can pick a phase to disrupt, e.g. the hero phase. During the battle round, each time a model in their opponent's army issues a command in that phase, the opponent must roll a dice. On a 3+, an additional command point must be spent to issue the command. The opponent can choose whether or not to spend the additional command. If they choose not to spend the additional command, the command is not received, though it still counts as being used, and the command point spent was lost. Wow, that's harsh. First thing, I think the objectives are too close in this. I prefer when the 3 objectives, if the 2 are wider on this, and sort of the halfway points of the objectives on this deployment map. We do have 1, 2 more, which is good scoring. Disruption, probably not my favorite rule here. Some armies rely on command points, and some armies have access to more command points than others. It doesn't require Andorian Locusts, though, so it's, you know, universally okay for use outside of this battle pack, which is definitely a good thing. But I'm not a fan of the deployment of objectives on this, and I really don't like the disruption rule. I think that can be heavily in favor of particular armies. So for me, this is a no. We go to 3 and 2. Next is every step is forward. This is a interesting deployment map. I haven't seen this deployment map before. 4 objectives, interestingly placed. We've got give no ground on this. If your unit makes a charge move until the end of that turn, you add 1 to the number of models that each model in that unit counts for as the purpose of contesting objectives. The unit retreats until the end of the round. Models in that unit cannot contest objectives. So this is definitely pushing forward. Score 1, 2 more. I don't mind this. I think this is an interesting deployment map. What have we got? Have we got 9 inch? Yep, 9 inch away. So there's are only going to be like little 2-inch bands on the bottom and top corners there. But I don't mind this. I think this is interesting. I think the whole giving options for retreat and run, for retreating and charging, I mean, is interesting. This could be really fun. So this makes, you know, defending your objectives a little bit harder because your opponent comes in and counts as more. But it also means you can't retreat off objectives and you can't do any of those little shenanigans. I'm going to put this in a good pile. I think halfway through we are 4 and 2 for me. Number 7, or at least the 7th battle plan we've looked at here, we have limited resources. That cool sort of spread of objectives, you know, and the diagonals could be interesting. It might be better if like these were, if one of these was central, one of these was right on the battlefield, and they were on the battlefield edge here. I think it could be a little bit better spread. But we have Siphon Meltwater. When a player gains control of an objective, they start to siphon Meltwater. After scoring victory points, a player whose turn it was controls an objective that they controlled at the end of their previous turn, they have siphoned all the Meltwater from that objective. For the rest of the battle, that player cannot control that objective. That's interesting. So you can't control it, but your opponent then can use it. So this is an interesting sort of thing. I think this is definitely going to have issues with during the game with people forgetting when they've controlled objectives. So you definitely want to have markers here. But I do like the idea of this. I think this is cool. 1, 2 more. I really like this. I think this is cool. This is forcing you to move along. Yeah, I'm going to put this in my good pile. I like this one. I like the deployment of the objectives. Could be a little bit more spread out, but I do like the idea of the siphoning meltwater. And it's got a little designer's note here that you can still contest it to stop your opponent getting it. Yeah, I like the battle plan here. We don't have Spring the Trap, so 3 and a very sort of narrow deployment. See, I like the spread on this is what I was talking about with the 3 objectives. I like this spread of 3 objectives in the center of the table a lot more. And I do like that they've done the deployment like this, so you actually have to start in and then go out, which is nice. Outflank during deployment after both players have set up their units. Starting with the attacker, each player can remove D3 units from the battlefield, and can set up those units placed in reserve within 6 inches of the battlefield edge and more than 9 inches away from all enemy units. Okay, cool. So we're getting outflanking. This can be quite interesting on sort of what and how you want to do it. I do like the little rule in this. 1, 2, and more is interesting. Yeah, I don't mind this. This can definitely help some armies in a way, but I think this could be a really fun one. I think the sort of, do you defend your flanks? Do you oppose your opponent's flanks? Could be a really interesting sort of thing to do. We don't have Fountains of Frost, so we have the different victory conditions here. So what have we got? 1, 2, and more. 6 objectives. Once again, I prefer if these would spread a little bit more on the sides. Andronian Locust units count as 10 for contesting the objectives. At the start of each battle shock phase, you roll a dice for each friendly objective controlled by 3 or more units. On a 4+, the contesting objective suffers each unit contesting the objective suffers D3 mortal wounds. So this could be, quite dangerous if you're going to try and play. It's okay. I don't like the Andorian Locusts count as in 10 models, could be interesting, but obviously they count as 1 to the 3, so there's a nice little trade-off for having them there. Probably not my favorite battle plan, I would say. So the ice fields, so I will say the objective spread in this is interesting. I do like the objective. Maybe if those home ones, the ones in the center of the territories, would drop back a little, and these would spread out to the flanks, or maybe one spread out on one side and one same, so those ones out more. However, I hate the realm rule, the special rule for this, which is each time a unit runs, it suffers D3 mortal wounds. I mean, it makes a charge, suffers D3 mortal wounds. Not a fan at all. Don't like this. This just pushes shooting armies to top. Never going to be a fan of that. Then we have the Frigid Zephyr. So cool deployment and cool objective layout. Like it. Ferocious Squall. At the start of the battlefield is affected by a squall. Till the squall disappears, units more than 12 inch apart are not visible. Anything that makes shooting gets bonus. At the start of each battle round, after determining who has to play. If the spell has not dissipated, the player taking the second turn rolls a dice and adds the number of the current battle round to the score. And 7+, the score dissipates. This has issues because there are certain armies that are short-range firepower. KO really don't care about this. This isn't terrible. The deployment map's cool. It is, maybe this battle plan would just be nicer without the Ferocious Squall and just playing 3 objectives across the table with that, in all honesty. And then our last battle plan, no reward without risk. Cool deployment map. I think for me, these objectives need to be on a little bit further out. But feedback overload, when a wizard is slain before removing that model on a 4+, they explode, doing some mortal wounds around. Cool. And it doesn't say Andorian Locust, this is just any wizard. 1, 2, more. This objective layout has been popular over different editions. Honestly, and I like this. I think it could be a little bit wider spread for the objectives here. Even if just 2 of these were pushed out, maybe the flank ones here that are on your territory are pushed out more to the side, meaning you're having to defend sort of wider, but push in sort of shallow. Could be an interesting way to spread out the battle plan a little bit more. But all in all, I think the battle plans for me, I think there is some really nice ones in this. I think this is definitely a better set of battle plans than we had previous season. There's a lot more objectives on the table in a ton of them, which is massively good. And even some of the ones with the 2 objectives, I remember the tower one that sort of has 4 objectives, not 2 technically. So yeah, I don't mind the battle plans for this. And so we then have the endless spells. So these have got a little bit of a change and update. So Horrorghast now, units cannot receive commands of the battle shock phase while they're within 12 inch. In addition, if they fail, still D3 mortal wounds, so nothing too much to change there for that particular endless spell. Still really solid as always. I do just like the Horrorghast. He has got a casting value of 5, so he's still pretty low to cast as well. We then have the Aether the Void Pendulum, which is doing D6 mortal wounds on a 2-up. So any unit, it passes across on each other unit within an inch, which is cool. Chronomatic cogs, mechanisms of time, you can choose to sort of speed up or decrease. If it's increasing time, so if it's increasing time, the flow of time, you can reroll charge rolls within 12 inch. If it's decreasing the flow of time, you can attempt to cast the Arcane Bolt or Mystic Shield in the hero phase with a friendly unit hollow within 6 inches of this endless spell without counting towards the number of spells that wizard can attempt to cast. Is a really interesting sort of change to it. We then have the Emerald Life Swarm doing healing, same as it always sort of did, just D3. So wounds allocated to the unit. If no wounds are allocated, you can return D3 models. Nice. The Geminids of Ulgish, after this endless spell is moved, roll a dice for each unit with any models that it passed across for each of those units within 1 inch at the end of the move. On a 2+, they can't issue or receive commands at the start of the next hero phase until the start of the next hero phase. That's really cool. Just stopping commands outright is solid. We then have the Malevolent Maelstrom. So you're sort of still charging it up and exploding. Though wizards suffer flat 3 mortal wounds against them, which is interesting. Can make it a little bit more deadly. Could be interesting to see maybe will the Maelstrom actually get some play. Prismatic Palisade, at the start, after this endless spell is set up, on a 3+, units can not make shooting attacks that turn, add 3 inches to the range of its ability at the start of each battle round. So it's no longer just negative hit, it just stops things being able to make shooting attacks, which is really cool. Yeah, that's really, really cool now. Just flat out stopping shooting attacks. I quite like that as an endless spell. Next, we have the Purple Son of Shaish. Subtract 1 from save rolls within 6 inch. In addition, roll the dice for each unit within 1 on a 1 if that unit has been touched by the Purple Sun's rays. If that unit has a wounds characteristic of 9 or less, 1 model from the unit is slain. Otherwise, that unit suffers D6 plus 6 mortal wounds. So they've slightly changed, how the killy stuff on the other spell. Maybe not quite, what we remember of just a 1, the model does, and all that fun. But can certainly have its uses. Quicksilver Swords, after the spell has been moved, pick an enemy unit, you roll 12 dice for each 5+, they suffer mortal wounds, and these mortal wounds can't be negated by any ability that can negate mortal wounds, so fun on that as well. We then have Ravnecks Gnashing Jaws after this endless spell is moved. On a 2+, the roll for the endless spell is moved with greater than that unit's move characteristic. The unit suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to the distance, so pretty cool. This is doing quite a bit of damage and slower moving models with, a lot of foot heroes potentially being on the battlefield. This could be really good at targeting them. Soul Snare Shackles at the start of the movement phase. You roll a dice for each unit within 6 inches of that endless spell and subtract the result from that unit's move characteristic. In addition, if the mover is reduced to 0, which they can be reduced to a minimum of 0, which is cool, at D3 mortal wounds. Suffocating Graveside, always I think one underappreciated, just due to the size of this endless spell on the table, can really be quite interesting. Have we got a little bit better? Range of 8 inch, that's really cool. We've got a nice bigger range on this now, so we can sort of fling it over lines, which is useful. I've always thought, the size, the casting range on this is the biggest drawback of it. It is always been an interesting one. If it has anything to move across, you roll a dice equal to the number of models in the unit. It passes 5+ mortal wound. Really great at clearing out hordes. I think it is a massively underappreciated endless spell. The Burning Head, after this endless spell is moved, you pick an enemy unit within range of it. On a 2+, the endless spell is treated as part of the enemy unit, either until that unit is destroyed or the endless spell is dispelled. The endless spell is part of the unit, and each movement phase on a 2+, that unit will suffer D3 mortal wounds. This is interesting. Like, it sort of goes with an enemy unit and keeps burning them. I really like this. This is cool. This is going to make the endless spell, travel around with your opponent's unit. Could be really quite interesting to see what it does. So Umbral Spell Portal, as you expect it to be. Soulscream Bridge on the 1 unit now, as it has been for a little while, so nothing to change here and talk about. And then lastly, Shards of Valagar. Well, within 6 inches of an spell with ability, units cannot be removed from the battlefield with an effect that will allow them to be set up again. That's really cool. I like the Shards now. Being able to stop teleports is cool. That's really nice. And Lorshon, the Soul Seeker, wizard with 9 wounds or less now. Same sort of thing, does a wound. Yeah, I really like the Shards. That's interesting. But that is the GHB rules, the battle plans, and the endless spells. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this down in the comments below. And so that is the end of the video. Thank you all for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to come chat more with me, we have a Discord server for the channel, and that is linked down in the video's description. Also linked down in the video's description are the best ways to help support the channel. This is either via Patreon or YouTube members using one of our affiliate links and codes down there, like Baron of Dice, Gap Games, or Mithras Games, or by supporting us directly on Patreon or YouTube members. If you'd like to do any of those, we have links for that all in the description. And as a special thank you to our Patrons and YouTube members, we'd like to give them all a shout out. So thank you to our Patreons: Soren, Kenny Lowell, Outer and Shot First, Andrew Bowen, Q Dynamic, JJ Austrian, Average Wargamer, Domir, Mark Harvey, James Cater, Benjamin Swallers, Red Martin, Iron Grinch, Colorblind Magic, Grimscold, and Andy C. And our YouTube members: Greenrich Gaming, Ronya, Lock Lorick, The Johnny84, Broken Chef, Ariana Edwards, Revenar, Pink Nico Fire, Robin Mankiller, Monty's Tabletop Terrain, James Tillman, Disco, and John Castle. Lastly, a special thanks to Lady Witchfox Art, who does all the amazing artwork you see on the channel. Once again, everyone, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment down below. Stay safe, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the grey. Ciao for now.